We're off to go plant food plots for my favorite customer. I'm bringing my son over to ride a dirt bike out in his woods. We'll see how that goes. So we are driving out to the woods. Oh, there's some mountain laurel. I was just talking about that stuff yesterday. Poison the heck out of your goats. Kid's riding on the back of the tractor with his dirt bike strapped to the side of it. Culvert. I got to get lined up real good on it, or I'll be putting some tires off the side and squishing the ends of it. And then you got to climb a hill and turn. Coming back is actually a little worse because the turn is right up on it. Got a log in the way too, actually. Boy's still attached. Yep, we're good. Got stuck in this little mud hole last winter. Slipped tires on. I got some good shoes on now. And right here's a turn where I found up against that oak tree right there. Big load of logs. There's some stumps. Driving up on the stumps in the center. I had to use the skid steer to shove the whole trailer. I had the rub rail jammed right into that oak tree. That was a problem. They got their sawmill right there. So this is what we're going to disc down and plant the next crop into. Looking a lot greener than it used to. A lot more topsoil, so that's really good. We'll get started here. So it doesn't look like much, but this was where we grew sorghum this year. First time that this ground was cropped, and it had a lot of topsoil removal from clearing the woods in years past. So the soil had been basically dozed off to make this level, sort of paddocky kind of area. Not by me, by a previous owner. And it was a lot of sandy clay and just kind of rough, hard ground. Not a lot of black to it, you know, real yellow, hard, poor growing. We walk over here, you'll see a lot more of what it really looked like. My boy riding a dirt bike. This is pretty much what the ground looked like when I got here last year. You know, a lot of bare stuff, a lot of compaction from rain and blazing sun with no ground cover. And this is the first crop that we planted here. I'm not saying it was amazing, but it's crop. You know, It's a organic matter. It's been drilled up from the bottom. It's brought all that mineral up to the surface. A lot of it's native grass, and that's okay. I mean, that's sorghum right there. It didn't put out an incredible showing, but we've got all this matter right here to now cover the soil, and it's working up easier than the first time. There's a lot more roots in there. There's a lot more structure. It's aggregated quite well for the first year. I'm impressed. And we're now going to just seed into it and disc it in. You can see that color right there, the color transition in my hand from sandy on this side to living on that side. So, you know, from yellow to darker. I'm pretty happy with it, and it's going to probably be a whole heck of a lot better for this season. We're going to probably plant some food plots that Marty's got, food plot mixes, commercial ones, and see how it does. And we're going to find out what this ground will support, because there's a lot of stuff in that mix and not all of it's going to grow. But when you figure out what it does well, let's say maybe rye and oats and wheat does good, well, we can just buy that by the 50-pound sack cheaper from the co-op than versus buying it from deer plots. But this is one way to find out fast what'll grow, because there's probably 30 different kinds of seeds in this mixture he's bought. So we'll get started here. This is going really well. I'm very, very happy with the increase in the tilth and just the softness. This ground is cutting a lot easier than it did the year prior, and we did have rain, so that is a slight difference. Having rain and having the aggregation to keep some moisture in the ground makes that clay cut so much easier when it's wet versus dry. Dry clay is like concrete, and wet clay is like a milkshake. So that makes a huge difference. But also the living root mass just makes everything softer. And you can see now that we've got all of this organic matter to lay on top of the seed. Makes a tremendous difference in how much moisture the soil can retain, and in the reduction of compaction, especially with clay soils, because when it rains in a downpour, the water droplets, they hit the ground and you have particles that fly up in the air. The heaviest particles, the sands and gravels, they come down first. Your clays and silts weigh basically nothing, and they're gonna kind of float back down, and they're gonna land last. But they're very liquid and fluid, so they're gonna fill in all the pores. All the porosity is gonna be plugged up, and that's what gives you that crust on the top of a clay soil if you leave it bare. If you were to churn up a clay soil and then cover it with a hay bale, it can pour on that over and over. As long as that dirt particles aren't allowed to fly up in the air from the rain droplets, you're not going to get that crusting, that compaction. So bare soil gets crusted, covered soil stays soft. Plus the moisture stays in because that organic mat on top acts as a sunblock that prevents the moisture from being wicked out by the sun. Your growth rates are directly correlated, 100% correlated to soil temperature and soil moisture. The hotter the temperature, the less moisture. There's no way around that. So I do see some worms crawling around in here. They might be army worm. I'm not familiar with those, but I've seen about 3 of them since I've been walking and talking. Pretty fast moving little caterpillar worm looking things. I'll have to look into what that is. My son's over there messing with me. He knows I'm trying to make a video, so he's beeping the horn to be an idiot. Hey! Quit. little preview of this crop of what looks like mostly sorghum at this point. A lot more shade in here, so this stuff is smaller, but it's also quite a bit greener and earlier in its stage of maturity. So maybe that means the more sunshine, the faster the maturity. There's actually some cowpea growing in here. There was a lot less cowpea in the other field. This one has quite a bit more cowpea, which is good. I believe this field had a good amount of deer activity too. So this is like the premier paddock out here. There's probably 10,000 acres of land around except for one road. And this area is, the boys have run it over really good and seeded into it with the four-wheeler before I got to this paddock, but this was like 6 to 8 feet high and really, really thick and dense to where we can't see the ground at all. Even after I'm done disking it, we're hardly going to see any dirt, which is wonderful. And the disc's primary purpose is just going to be to terminate this warm season crop so that it can mulch and nurse the next cool season crop. And huge difference out here. There's an area down there we just discussed that it's thin because this was made with a dozer and a lot of topsoil was lost, and the soil wasn't rebuilt before attempting to put the next food plots with the previous owner, and he just wasn't able to get soil back in here. So down there was almost completely bald, and we seeded that extra heavy, and it's still clumpy, but there's actually a showing of living material. And rather than culling that living material, we're going to leave that go all the way to a frost kill on its own, because it's keeping the soil together and it's feeding the microbial life that's in there, and it's also catching any runoff, because when I disturb all this dirt, the rain is going to want to take it away. So we're going to leave that as like a net to capture the soil runoff, which will further enrich that troubled soil that's down there by catching the whatever we lose for loose particles. And come after the hunting season's over and after the winter kill has occurred, that area down there is going to get frost seeded, which was the original establishment, the very, very first seeding, right, Marty? The very first seeding out here that took hold. We were too late in the year or something, I don't remember, that we didn't get one planted. Or originally the plan was to truck wood chips out here, because this was just bald, hard, bare, dead clay. The plan was to truck wood chips out here, and the logistics were too challenging and time was too short. So the last ditch effort was to just try it, just throw some seed out, frost seed it, which is, and out here this works fantastically well because we have such a cyclical nature of frozen nights, nice warm days, frozen nights, nice warm days, till we actually have like ice pushing up out of the ground all the time. And that really, it wicks and pulls the seed down in without any kind of disturbance whatsoever. So you have minimal erosion from it. And so the first stand that really took well up here was a frost seeding. And the frost seeding crop in the spring was what we were able to disc this summer crop that you're looking at into. So the first frost seeding gave us the green matter to put this crop into, and now this crop is just wonderful. Like, couldn't ask for better. Considering that a year ago there was no topsoil here at all. There was just nothing to plant into. It looked like a rock quarry, and now it looks like a corn patch. So it just keeps getting better, which is really proof that God's system is flawless if man would get his head out of his butt and stop messing it up. So we're just going to keep going with that. And whatever's thin, it's going to get frost seeded to wheat this like dead of winter this year. And that is because wheat has a really vigorous taproot. It's just a really robust plant, and it's dirt cheap, so you can overdo it. And if it comes up too thick, wonderful. The deer love it. It makes fantastic hay. Everything likes to eat wheat, and it'll make another thick mat like this. We'll disc it in, we'll plant the next crop into it, and it'll do the same exact thing. And we're just going to keep building soil until it looks like a garden out here. So praise the Lord. This is it. All done. Last one. This one was really tall with the sorghum, and we had a lot of wrapping up around the disc. It took quite a long time to get it unwrapped because the discs themselves were binding up. So I went and crisscrossed. Since everything was laying one way, I came across the other way. Tried a few different settings on the top link to engage, the front versus the back row. A neutral setting seemed to work the best between wrapping up and actually getting chopping. The thicker stems do chop pretty easy, but it also helped to disturb and shake in the seed that had landed on top, since we laid it down once, seeded it, and then crisscross worked it back in. And I think that we're going to get a pretty good showing on this one. Lord willing, we get the rain, it'll be a good season.